Hello, everyone. Welcome to the paper and the data. This is the third module in a series, and this one is about software. These modules were first introduced at the Ocean Science meeting in February 2020. I want to recognize Erin Robinson's contribution, though she's not on the call with us today. She's the Executive Director for Earth Science Information Partners and contributed significantly to these modules. But I do have with us today Randy Townsend, who's AGU's Director of Publications Operations. Hello, Randy, how are you?
I'm well, Shelly. How are you doing today?
I am doing really well. Let's get started and talk about software. So we have today, which software are we referring to? We're going to talk about the availability statements and citations within publications, the bugaboo about GitHub and all of the other development platforms, and then we've got an example for you. So let's get going. Also, really want to highlight Alice Allen, who helped to put together some of these slides, and I've actually borrowed a couple of them from her. She's with ASCL and works with astronomical software and has huge contributions to the software citation implementation group through Force 11. So thank you, Alice. These first couple slides, she's pulled some quotes where really source code is incredibly important for our scientific results. I think you've had a chance to read this one here. The fact that disputes have taken place without access to the code to validate differences or errors or at least differences in opinion, and that we do have, not intentional, but sometimes that fat finger moment where we may have introduced a bug, and without help from our peers, sometimes it's hard to find. So important to note it, to really recognize the importance of software within our research, and thank you, Alice, for having put those together. So which software are we talking about? Software is kind of an umbrella term. This could be code or workflows or models that we're using to that really contribute to the importance of our research findings, and that's what is really what we're trying to get at. Not all research is heavily dependent on software, although quite a lot of it is, and we're evolving towards including those citations within our papers. So what do you include in your paper? And this is a little tuned to AGU because we do have our availability statements in the open research section of the paper, and that's where you would include your software. Within that section, some other journals place the availability statement in other locations, and you want to include where that version of the software is located, specifically where it's preserved. Recognizing the fact that some development platforms like GitHub are not preservation platforms, but you may also want to include that link as well because it's useful to other software developers who may want to build upon that. And then in the references section, you want to include the actual citation where that software is preserved. And if you are a GitHub user, just highlighting, and we'll talk more about this in a few slides, highlighting the fact that GitHub is integrated with Zenodo and can provide you with that preservation. And within the methodology section, you would be describing the importance of your software. So Randy, can you talk a little bit about how AGU is evolving with software citation?
Sure. Like you said, it really is evolving, and if your research is really heavily dependent upon the software, because it's evolving, we're really happy to help. We had an example where the availability statement was put into a paper, and a reader came in and saw that and tried to test the software and came across an error and contacted us, and we reached out to the author. We were able to make a correction off of it. So there's really practical uses for making the software available and making sure your statement does provide the appropriate information. in Citation as well. The authors were grateful that the people contacted us and were able to make that correction. So this is really a great opportunity to improve your paper.
That's a really good example that really demonstrates transparency, the entire scientific process working, and important to note that that did not result in a retraction. It was just a correction, and so really seeing science work optimally there. Really great example. Thank you. Alrighty. So where would you find these citations? Like, how do you know that you're actually following an appropriate scientific method or citation method? Let me say that clearly. There's three examples here of how you could have an appropriate citation for your software. If you happen to be working in a community like Alice Allen with astronomy, there are software domain repositories specific for your software. Within the Earth and Space Sciences, you can find those. For instance, we've got the Computational Infrastructure for Geodynamics, which does a really great job, and HydroShare with all of our hydrology community also supports software as well. There are software journals like JOS that you can work with. You can actually do an article if you want in JOS and have a companion paper within an AGU journal where they're both collaborative efforts that could be timed together. But you would, within the AGU journal, you would cite the actual article within JOS as well as where that software is preserved in its appropriate repository. And then there's one that's maybe even a little bit more used, and I'm thinking of the GitHub Zenodo connection, but you would have a general repository like Zenodo that supports software preservation. And there are others that also support software preservation, just to be very straight up. And that's also a perfectly adequate place as long as you have some, your metadata and recommended citation have been looked at. And we'll talk more about that. All right, so places that are not good for citing. GitHub itself is not a preservation platform. It's a fantastic software development platform, but it's not preservation level. And similar software development platforms like SourceForge or Bitbucket or GitLab are also not preservation platforms. And I have some, we have some slides that show you what the recommendations are. And then of course, just please know that any website you've got for your personal research or your institutional research is also not a preservation platform. It's great for sharing, but it's not great for preserving. Better to actually get your software into one of those preservation platforms and then put the citation on your personal webpage to direct people to that. So that would be a better best practice. So here's 3 slides talking about those software collaborative development tools like GitHub or Bitbucket, and the fact that they frankly don't have the policies that support preservation. You can certainly read this text yourself. Let me go ahead, since you can pause our broadcast, I'll go ahead and go forward and talk more about what you would need to do. For GitHub, the blue highlighted links, we'll have those for you in the resources section of the modules where you can get to them directly. But for GitHub, there is a really fantastic integration with Zenodo, and there's a page that will show you that walks you through exactly how to work with Zenodo. And then we want to add the double check for you. You can update the citation in Zenodo to make sure it came across correctly, such that the title and authors and everything are correct. We've seen consistently, you would not every citation always comes across correctly when it's auto-generated by Zenodo, so we really encourage you to make sure it's correct. Then, if you happen to be working in Bitbucket or GitLab or SourceForge or something similar, the recommendation is to generate an archive file, sometimes called a tar file, and then place those in a general repository like Zenodo or Dryad or Figshare, or there are several others in order to create your citation. So what that would look like, the template within the open research section for AGU, the open research section, perhaps the availability statement would go somewhere else in another journal, but you would say your software used for this research is preserved here, and you would give the link that has the DOI embedded, and then it's developed openly on, and then you would give, for instance, your GitHub link or your link to your Bitbucket or SourceForge or GitLab link there. Okay, hopefully that's clear. Let's keep going, Randy. So there's benefits to citing your software. You have the persistence of your software being that supports your actual research and the scientific record and the particular version that you use, not confused with anything else or any other copy, carefully preserved. It can be discovered separate from your paper, which is fantastic because that's more awareness for your work, and you get credit. When you put it into the citation, the reference section, the software citation into the reference section of your paper, you do get credit for that software being created as a research product separate from your actual research findings, which we're really delighted to support and encourage. There is a really fantastic group within Force 11, the Software Citation Implementation Group, and they have put out a checklist for authors that looks something like this, talking about making sure that any software that's significant to this research is included in the citations. That you, if it's somebody else's software or your own, that you're using the recommended citation, and that you have that citation within the references section. For AGU, it would be the references section, and that if you had to create it, you're following the guidance. Let's see, and the other one talks about complying with that citation formatting guidelines. So let's talk about what those elements of a software citation look like. The authors of who created it. It's kind of weird to talk about authors of software where we know that we're really talking about software developers or those who have participated in the design or those who have helped with the testing or other ways of contribution. So think about that all together in order to give appropriate credit for people who have supported the software. And when it was created, the title that you have, and if at all possible, please include the version or the release. That's really important for aligning that particular version with your research. And then the persistent identifier where that software is preserved or archived. Usually that is your DOI, your digital object identifier, but it might be something else, for instance. So here's an example. So this particular software package came out of GitHub, and it's also indexed on OpenAir, which is fantastic. And I've included lower on the page on the right-hand side for Zenodo, you can actually get the recommended citation, but I've included it here just because this slide is only so large. This has actually had quite a lot of views to it. So that's really fantastic. Thank you to these authors for what a great example. And for those of you who use GitHub, when you navigate to the page that shows you how to actually connect to Zenodo, this is what that page looks like. So that hopefully will be helpful for you as you are preparing to publish. All right, well, that's this module. Thanks everybody for joining us. And if you have any questions, you can write us at any of these emails or Twitter feeds. Thank you.